I just discovered my balance. The millionaire's heart stopped when he saw the incredible truth. The sun bore down on Rivertown that sweltering summer afternoon, its rays shimmering against Jake Turner's modest auto shop. Inside the garage, he wiped the sweat from his brow, his calloused hands carefully working on a rusty Chevy truck that belonged to a loyal, elderly veteran. Jake's soul radiated warmth. Just like the summer sun, he was the dependable flame in this tight-knit community, always lending a hand. But this afternoon was different. He could feel the weight on his shoulders. The financial burden of running the shop since the factory had closed last year pressed down hard on him like a heavy stone. He had inherited this garage from his father, a man who preached the value of honesty and compassion. Now the illusions of success clashed in a storm of uncertainty. Just then, his thoughts were interrupted by a screeching sound. A sleek black sports car, a stark contrast to the rusting machinery and chipped paint of the shop, whipped into the parking lot, drawing curious glances from the folks around. The car belonged to Mark Thompson, a wealthy entrepreneur, whose disdain for small-town life peeled away layers of his carefully curated success. He emerged from the car, adjusting his expensive tie, an arrogant sneer on his face that only deepened the furrows of Jake's brows. When Mark's prized vehicle stalled, marking his untimely visit to Rivertown, fortune had found its way to Jake unexpectedly. He approached Mark, offering an easy smile, stretching his calloused hands towards the snob in front of him. "I can help you with that," Jake said. As he delved into the engine, a camaraderie formed through shared frustration, but the contrast of their lives grew glaringly apparent. Jake's hands shook a bit, not from fear, but from the reality of his own struggles as Mark complained about a broken air conditioning system in the heat. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Tensions rose as Mark learned of Jake's daunting financial crises, leaving his judgment hanging like a storm cloud. Meanwhile, in the midst of this unexpected collision of their worlds, Jake's estranged brother Tom reemerged. The bitter misunderstanding from years past once again came rushing to the forefront. Those family ties were as fragile as the engine under his hands, and with everything spiraling out of control, the brotherly bond evoked both hope and painful nostalgia within him. As Jake juggled the pressure of mending past relationships and saving his beloved shop, nature decided to unleash its own turmoil. A sudden storm hit Rivertown, flooding the streets and threatening everything Jake had built. Yet amidst the chaos, Jake was out there helping neighbors, rescuing stranded families, and offering support even as the rain soaked through his clothes. Mark watched in awe as the townsfolk rallied behind Jake, their camaraderie shining brighter than any wealth he could muster. In that moment, something shifted within Mark. Questions formed in his mind. What did success really mean? Was a plush bank account worth the emptiness that gnawed at him? As the storm subsided, revelations began to dawn. Would Mark stand idly by or reach out fueled by inspiration from the compassion he saw, the connection Jake embodied? The ultimate test was about to unfold, leaving both men at a crossroads. Would they confront their own truths and learn what it truly meant to lift each other up? The storm clouds drifted away, revealing a shy but hopeful sun peeking over Rivertown. Jake stood outside his shop, drenched but somehow glowing with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. He surveyed the damage together with his neighbors, piecing together a reality that felt both familiar and foreign at the same time. The stubborn water had receded, but the echoes of their efforts lingered like ghosts, reminding them of the kindness that stitched their community together. Mark leaned against the sleek black sports car, still looking out of place amidst the suburban landscape. His brow furrowed as he observed Jake, engaged in lively conversation with a group of folks who had gathered. Laughter mingled with relief, and the camaraderie spilling from their mouths warmed the air even more than the sun. The sight stirred something deep inside Mark. The stark contrast of joy here compared to the hollowness that accompanied his own successes felt like a punch in the gut. He dropped his shoulders, the weight of his own pretense crashing down. So much focus had been placed on climbing the ladder of success that he had forgotten how to simply be present. That realization stung. It was the act of sharing in these small-town victories that mattered more than yacht parties and extravagant dinners. Mark cleared his throat, desperation edging into his thoughts. Would these people welcome him? Was there still time to carve a place for himself in this newfound revelation? With a determined stride he moved toward Jake, who was now surrounded by a couple of kids helping him move debris. Their laughter rang out like musical notes, bouncing off the garage walls. Mark swallowed hard, the closeness of the moment pushing against his comfort zone. The past hung around him like a shroud, but within him, a flicker of hope ignited. "Hey, Jake," he called out, his voice barely rising above the chatter. The laughter faded, and all eyes turned to him. Jake looked up, his expression unreadable yet inquisitive. The children paused, whispering among themselves, their curious glances darting between the two men. Mark took a deep breath, words tumbling forward. "I know my car isn't the only thing that needs fixing," he admitted, gesturing towards the crowd. "I'd like to help whatever it takes." The sincerity in his voice wrapped around Jake, who felt a sudden rush of emotions. The hesitation that normally bubbled at the edges of such interactions evaporated like morning dew. It was a long road ahead, but they were both standing at the same starting line now. A husky laugh erupted from one of the kids, little Brianna, her pigtails bouncing. "Let us show him how to build a wall," she cried, bypassing the grown-ups and grabbing Mark by the hand. Jake chuckled at the absurdity, but the strangest warmth spread through him. "Yeah, let us break that wall down together," Jake said, grinning wide as he joined Brianna at Mark's side. The little girl's innocent enthusiasm lightened the air, sparking a connection Mark had long given up hope to find. As the three of them began the task, just under the warm sun, they weren't just fixing a garage or building walls. They were breaking boundaries and rebuilding trust. Each nail driven into place felt more meaningful than any past achievement. Mark glanced sideways at Jake, whose focus lay squarely on the work ahead, but Mark couldn't shake the feeling that that moment was a turning point. Just as they finished, the local sheriff pulled up, his brow furrowed with concern. He hopped out of the car, breathless. "Guys, we've got a problem. There's more rain coming, and the creek's about to overflow. And it's worse than before." An uneasy silence fell over the group as the weight of the sheriff's words sank in. Everyone turned to Jake and Mark, unsure of what to do. Would this new partnership hold up against the brewing storm? Would they face the next challenge united? Or would the weight of the past draw them back into the shadows? The sun's warmth felt fragile against the rising tide of worry. Mark exchanged a glance with Jake, the uncertainty hanging in the air heavier than the impending clouds. The community's laughter muted, replaced by the steady thrum of anxiety. Each person present seemed to hold their breath, waiting for direction. "Okay, folks. Gather your tools and head to your homes. Check your basements and yards, see what you can do to prevent any water damage." Jake's voice cut through the tension, steady and firm, like a beacon. He had always been the town's anchor, the one who rolled up his sleeves and got to work. But this time, there was something different in the way he looked at Mark. It was almost as if he was silently asking, "Are you in?" Mark felt a flutter of fear as he processed the urgency behind the sheriff's announcement. This was the moment to prove himself not just to Jake, but to the whole town. He took a breath, closing his eyes for a brief moment. This wasn't about the car or the business anymore. It was about belonging somewhere. "I'll help with whatever needs to be done," Mark declared, surprising even himself. The words felt powerful, like a promise he was finally ready to keep. Brianna's eyes sparkled with determination. "Can we save the park?" she piped up, her voice a striking reminder of innocence amid chaotic uncertainty. Mark hesitated. "Sure, how do we grab sandbags?" Jake interjected, already swinging into action. He led the group to the back of the garage. "If we can block the creek, we can protect the park and everyone's yards. We'll all work together." The intensity of the moment surged through Mark. He felt the awakening of purpose intertwining with the worry. They rushed to gather supplies, slinging the bags over their shoulders. The urgency fueled their resolve. Everyone worked in unison, hearts pounding in rhythm with their movements. While stuffing sand into a bag, Mark caught a glimpse of the community spirit flourishing around him. The teenagers and adults worked side by side, laughter cascading over the tension, holding tightly to hope that they could weather this storm together. "You're doing great," Jake called to Mark as they both dragged a bag across the yard, deeply entrenched in their labor. "This is what it's all about. Feeling each other's strengths." Mark paused, looking into Jake's supportive eyes. "What if I've lost my chance to really be part of this?" he admitted, vulnerability creeping into his voice. Jake shook his head, a reassuring smile on his lips. "It's never too late. Just show up. That's all it takes." And just then, an ominous rumble rolled through the sky. Thunder cracked overhead, the first droplets of rain falling like harbingers of the struggle to come. They quickly picked up their pace, bracing for the onslaught. There was something exhilarating about this teamwork, this race against time. Together they built walls, both physical and emotional. Mark felt the bonds of the community tightening around him, dissolving the ghosts of his lone past. But as they stood in the rising rain, Mark suddenly spotted a figure, his estranged father, John, standing at the edge of the park, his face etched with concern. Mark's heart raced. What was he doing here? After all these years? Was this just another storm to weather, or an opportunity for reconciliation? The rain fell harder, creating a curtain of chaos around them. Mark took a step forward, the familiar confusion swirling within him. Should he confront his past now, during the storm, or focus on his newfound place in Rivertown? In that swirling chaos, the answer lingered painfully at the edge of his heart. The storm was upon them, and not just the weather. Would he choose to see the truth of who he really was, both a son and a new friend? The wind howled, and as the sky darkened, the real battle and transformation awaited just beyond the torrential rain. Would Mark find the courage to face both the storm and the man he had always needed to reconcile with? The rain pelted down in sheets, soaking everything in its path. Mark's heart thundered in rhythm with the storm. He struggled to keep his focus as his father's figure grew clearer through the curtain of water. John stood still, seemingly absorbed by the chaos swirling around him. Yet his eyes held a longing that cut through the din. "What are you doing here?" Mark shouted over the roaring wind, knowing full well that every moment spent staring at his father was a moment stoked by unresolved feelings. Could he really bridge the years of hurt and anger, while trying to save the town from destruction? John moved closer, hands raised defensively, and drowned out by the rain he shouted back, "I never stopped thinking about you." The words were swallowed by the storm, but Mark felt their weight. It was a simple declaration, yet filled with years of regret and longing. As the guilt and yearning crashed over him like the waves that threatened the town, Mark's resolve started wavering. His eyes darted back to Jake and the others, who were all hustling with renewed energy. They shouted encouragement to one another as they worked to pile up the sandbags, the community spirit igniting a fire within him. In this moment he wasn't just fighting a storm. He was battling a lifetime of feeling out of place. "Mark." Brianna's call cut through the chaos, snapping him back to reality. "We need your help." "Go, I'll be right there," he yelled, barely able to see her through the rush of wind and rain. John took another step forward, hands now gripping the fabric of his dirt-streaked jacket, eyes pleading, "Just let me help." The tempest raged around them. As Mark stood torn, his heart wrestled with the choice: a confrontation with his father, or simply joining the fight for the town that was beginning to feel like home. "I don't know if I can," he started, emotions choking him. "You can," John insisted, trying to sidestep the tension in the air. "You're part of this community, and that's why I came back to find you." Thunder rumbled again, this time echoing his inner turmoil. Mark closed his eyes and took a steadying breath. He could feel the warmth of friendship and acceptance from the town pressing against his fears. He wanted to belong, but a part of him still hesitated. "Just show up," Jake's words echoed in his mind. So was this what showing up meant? Facing his father as he tried to claim his place in Rivertown? In that tense moment, everything narrowed down to a single truth. He could no longer hide from the past. It was time to confront it, even if it was under the weight of the storm. "I can't do this alone," Mark confessed, his voice barely breaking through the rain. John visibly shuddered, then said, "You don't have to. I'm here, and together, we can face whatever's coming our way." With every ounce of defiance against his fear, Mark stood taller. He lifted his chin, staring into his father's earnest eyes. There was a flicker of hope. This was a moment when the past could become a bridge instead of a wall. Without another word, together they stepped forward. They joined the frantic rush to save their town, to save the park and their relationship. As they worked side by side, Mark felt the thawing of old wounds, the pulse of kinship thrumming strongly amidst the rising chaos. But in the back of his mind lingered a weighty thought: what if the storm wasn't the only concern they would face? The winds howled ever louder, imbuing the air with an electric intensity. What awaited them on the other side of this downpour? Would the fight for Rivertown unveil the depths of his unresolved relationship? Or was this just the beginning of a much bigger storm? The wind whipped fiercely, sending mud splattering against Mark's shoes as he and John raced toward the stack of sandbags. The chaos around them had become a whirlwind of determination. And with each droplet striking his skin, he felt the pressure of the moment swelling in his chest. "Over here," Brianna called, her voice piercing through the storm's roar. Mark adjusted his grip on the wet sandbag, feeling the roughness of its fabric under his fingers, grounding him in the wild uncertainty. As they arrived at the front line of their makeshift barrier, Mark worked feverishly beside Jake and the others. The rhythm of their actions synchronizing like a pulse, each shove and lift synchronized to the urgency in the air. With every sandbag piled high, he felt an unfamiliar sense of belonging. John dove into the work beside him, their bodies brushing against one another as they scrambled to reinforce their defense. The distance that had once stretched between them felt like whispered memories being pulled closer, a shared burden connecting father and son amid the tempest. "We're doing great, Mark," John hollered, his voice a beacon amid the chaos. There was something raw and unfiltered in the way he spoke, something that spoke of unapologetic pride. "I don't want to let everyone down," Mark admitted, his breath coming in short bursts as they fought against the wind. His heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "You won, T. We're a team," John replied, offering a grin that cut through the storm's intensity. Just like that, the small flicker of warmth ignited inside Mark, pushing back the shadows that had cloaked their relationship for so long. As the rain continued to soak them, each strike of thunder felt like an echo of their past, reminding Mark of every moment spent feeling abandoned. But standing shoulder to shoulder in this fierce battle, it began to feel less like a curse and more like a raw opportunity to forge a new path. "Look," Jake shouted, pointing to the town's South Main Street. "The water's starting to rise faster than we thought." Adrenaline surged through Mark like fire. Panic trickled into his gut as he glanced at the rushing waters, darkness creeping closer. Without thinking, he abandoned the pile of sandbags and sprinted in the direction Jake had pointed. "We need to get everyone out." Sprinting ahead, fueled by instinct, he could hear John's heavy footsteps behind him. They maneuvered around scattered debris, their focus now entirely on the safety of Rivertown's heart. Mark shouted warnings to those nearby, urging them to secure their homes, to move to higher ground. But amid the urgency, Mark stole a glance back at John, who appeared focused yet vulnerable, the weight of all they defaced in the past visible in the furrow of his brow. And in that fleeting moment, the simple truth struck him: the storm wasn't solely threatening their town. It threatened to dissolve the fragile bridge they had started to build. Suddenly, lightning split the sky, illuminating the scene in stark contrast: the chaos, the urgency, and the raw connections among the townsfolk. Mark's breath caught in his throat when he realized that this fight wasn't just about the storm. It was about fighting for their place in each other's lives. "Mark." John's voice broke through his thoughts, bursting with desperation. "Don't go too far." The concern in his father's shout pulled Mark back. He felt his heart stall for just a moment, realizing this was more than just physical safety. It was the emotional turmoil of confrontation, connection, and healing. But was he truly ready to face what lay beneath? With his body frozen in place, the storm raging above, Mark felt the weight of his choices. Could he find balance between fighting for the town and building a renewed relationship with the man he had once wanted to forget? As the thunder rumbled ominously overhead, Mark grasped the cool, wet fabric of his shirt, standing on the cusp of a new battle, not just against nature, but within himself. Would he step forward into that uncertain truth? The winds howled a fierce, response, and just as he prepared to leap into the fray, the ground trembled beneath his feet, revealing a possibility far more dangerous than he had anticipated. What would that revelation cost? Would it shatter what semblance of hope was left, or would it forge an unbreakable bond? The ground shifted again, sending a jolt through Mark's legs. He dove forward, bracing himself against the chaos. The water swirled around his ankles, creeping ever closer to the point of no return. In that moment, fear surged through him, not just for Rivertown, but for the fragile hope hanging between him and John. "Mark, stay with me." John's command cut through the din. Mark turned to see his father struggling to hold back a wave of debris threatening to overtake the people in the street. The desperation in his father's voice resonated deep inside Mark. Together, they cleared fallen branches and overturned furniture, forming a path for those who needed it most. Their shoulders brushed again, the contact sparking warmth in an otherwise frigid landscape. Mark felt a renewed determination rising within him, pushing him forward through the onslaught. The scene was chaotic. People were rushing past, clinging to children and pets, their faces a blend of worry and determination. Mark's heart raced for their safety, and he shouted for more help. "Let us brigade. Form a line. We can move them out faster." Brianna joined him, panting yet unwavering. "What do we do next?" she asked, her eyes scanning the escalating waters in front of them. "Get everyone to higher ground. We need to get them to the community center. It's the sturdiest building around," Mark shouted back. His mind raced as he caught sight of neighbors struggling to navigate the rising tide. This was more than survival. It was a testament to their perseverance. They were all in this together, fighting not just for their homes, but for each other. John reappeared beside him, his brow drenched and determination etched across his face. "We'll need to carry some," John said, nodding toward an elderly couple struggling to keep their footing. The heart within Mark crumbled at the sight, and without a moment's hesitation, he rushed forward, offering his arm. "Here, take my hand," Mark exclaimed, pulling both the elderly woman and man toward safety. The couple gazed up at him, gratitude shining through their fear. "Thank you, young man," the lady croaked, tears mingling with the rain on her cheeks. "You're a good boy." Hearing those words ignited something deep within Mark. He made eye contact with John, and for the briefest moment, understanding passed between them. They might not have had perfect words in years, but in this moment of action and shared purpose, something shifted. Together, they secured the couple, moving them forward in a team of strength and resolve. Mark's mind was racing, a flurry of thoughts about their strained relationship, the shared memories that always hung like shadows. But in this life-or-death moment, those thoughts faded. "Remember the time we fixed up the old tree house?" John breathed beside him, his voice filled with nostalgia. Mark nodded, his heart warming at the memory of laughter over summer days. The storm acted as a terrible reminder. Yet in this whirlwind of chaos, the foundations of their bond began to rise above the floodwaters. The connection was fragile, but they were fighting for it. The realization that they both desired to rebuild became an unspoken promise between them. "Keep going," Brianna shouted again, pulling Mark out of his thoughts. "Time's running out." Just then, a fierce gust knocked Mark sideways, and he stumbled. Turning instinctively, he reached for the nearest support, his father's arm. John caught him, steadying him. The electricity of their contact pulsed, a striking duality. Urgency and the uncharted potential of second chances. In that moment, as they steadied themselves and pressed forward against the storm, Mark's heart swelled. There was still uncertainty looming, but he felt a flicker of hope. They were in the storm together, and that was worth every struggle they'd ever faced. But just as they reached a hesitant crowd near the community center, something massive loomed in the swirling waters. Mark's breath caught. A tree, uprooted and staggering, was headed straight toward them. "Mark!" John yelled, his intensity pulling Mark back into focus. "Get ready to run." Would they escape this collapsing moment, or would the storm tear apart not just their town, but the very path of healing they had begun? All of it hung in the air like the charged atmosphere above them, waiting for that one moment of truth. Mark's heart raced as the tree hurtled toward them, a dark shadow against the churning waters. Adrenaline coursed through him, sharpening his senses. He didn't think, he just acted. Run! He shouted, his voice thick with urgency. The crowd, sensing the danger, turned in unison, a wave of fear flooding their faces. Without hesitation, Mark gripped John's arm tighter and started to sprint toward the community center, pulling the elderly couple along. Move. Now! He yelled. Every muscle in his body screamed, but he pushed through, feeling the raw power of survival surging through him. Behind them, the roar of the tree crashing into the ground echoed like thunder. Mark glanced back. The enormous trunk snapped into the road, sending shards of debris flying. He ducked his head, pulling the couple closer, shielding them as chaos erupted. People stumbled and fell, but Mark's world had narrowed. All he could see was the path ahead and their safety. Brianna was right beside him, her expression grim yet resolute as she kept pace. Once they reached the steps of the community center, John called back, "Help them inside. I'll grab others." He took off again, disappearing into the rush. Mark turned to the couple, their faces pale but determined. "You're safe now," he reassured them, ushering them up the stairs. "Keep moving. We need to get everyone out of the rain." As the couple stumbled into the sturdy building, Mark felt a swell of relief, but it quickly turned to panic when he looked back. The street had become a battleground of swirling water and broken branches, mixing with the remnants of lives uprooted. Just then he saw the other families struggling to make it to the center. The urgency hit him again. "We need a chain," he shouted to Brianna and some others who had just arrived. "We can't leave anyone behind." Without hesitation, the group formed a line, hands gripping each other's arms for strength and stability. Mark took a deep breath, feeling a newfound resolve. With Brianna at his side, they slipped back out into the storm. Each run felt like a test of will. But with every person they rescued, every connection restored, the bond with his father seemed to strengthen. They reached another family, two parents clutching their children, panic etched on their faces. "Follow us," Mark shouted, wrapping an arm around a trembling child. "We'll get you to safety." The little girl's eyes locked onto his. Despite her fear, a flicker of trust sparkled within them. Mark could feel the weight of his promise to keep them safe. It wasn't just about the rescue anymore, it was about rebuilding faith. As they hurried back, Mark's heart thudded in his chest. Each face they helped, every grateful glance was a step toward healing. He could feel John's presence guiding him, could sense their connection solidifying with every act of bravery. When the last family was pulled into the safety of the community center, Mark collapsed against the doorframe, gasping for breath. He had given everything he had, and in return, he felt something profound awakening within himself. He had stepped beyond his own fears and anger. He felt alive with purpose, with hope. The storm around him raged on, but within the community center, a new sense of strength began to emerge. Just then John appeared, breathing heavily but beaming with pride. "We did it, son," he said, eyes shining with something like joy. "We really did it." But before Mark could respond, the power flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. A collective murmur erupted among the crowd. "Stay calm. We're safe here." John's voice cut through the uncertainty. But as Mark strained to see through the dim light, a new fear gripped him. Outside, he could hear the angry winds shifting again, and beneath it, an ominous sound began to grow, a low rumble that told them this storm had more fury left to unleash. What would happen when night fell, and the true battle for Rivertown began? Mark's pulse raced in the pitch-black darkness. The only sound was the wind howling outside, mingling with the distant crashes of thunder. Anxiety hung heavy in the air. People shifted in the spacious room, their unease palpable. "Everyone listen," John called out, trying to curb the rising panic. "We'll stay together, right here. Let us light some candles, and make sure everyone checks on their neighbor." Mark took a deep breath, letting his father's steady voice calm him. He turned to Brianna, who stood close, her face glowing with the faint light from a flashlight someone had dug out of a bag. "What do we do if the storm gets worse?" she asked, her voice soft yet urgent. "We keep each other safe," Mark replied, his resolve firm. "We're stronger together." They began to light the candles that were scattered across tables, illuminating the space with a flickering glow. Shadows danced on the walls as people huddled closer, sharing stories of warmth and hope to fill the chilling silence. As Mark moved to help, he noticed the elderly couple he had rescued earlier, sitting together on a bench. They were holding hands tightly, and their eyes were wide with fear. Mark approached them, forcing a gentle smile. "You two okay?" The woman glanced up at him, tears brimming. "We didn't think we would make it. Thank you for saving us." "It wasn't just me," Mark responded, his heart swelling. "We're all in this together. You're safe now." Before he could engage further, a sharp crack echoed outside, and the ground shook slightly beneath his feet. Whispers of fear swept through the room. It was like the storm itself was raging against their sanctuary. "We need to figure out what's going on outside," Mark urged, his instinct driving him to take action again despite the fear gripping his stomach. "Stay with the group," Brianna insisted, grabbing him by the arm. "We can't split up now." He hesitated, torn between the urge to help and the need to keep others safe. I can't sit here and do nothing." Just then, a figure stepped from the shadows. It was John, his face serious and his eyes narrowed. "Mark, listen to Brianna. We need to hold our ground. Trying to go out now could lead us into danger." Mark nodded slowly, recognizing the wisdom in his father's words. It felt like a struggle to stay put, but deep down he understood the power of unity, the importance of each person together in this fight. As they gathered closer around the candles, Mark felt a small hand slip into his. He turned and saw that it was the little girl from earlier, her fearful gaze searching for reassurance. Without thinking, he knelt to her level. "Hey there, we're going to be okay," he whispered gently. "Trust me. Can you be brave for me?" The girl nodded, squeezing his hand as if it would anchor her. In that moment, he knew he needed to be the calm for her, the hope that would keep her from sinking into despair. But as the wind howled louder, the sounds outside morphed into something more unnerving. The low rumbles deepened, echoing ominously. It felt like a warning, a harbinger of the fury that was yet to come. He looked at Brianna, whose eyes mirrored the uncertainty that churned inside him. "What do you think it is?" she barely managed to ask. But before Mark could answer, the building shuddered again, and a loud crash erupted somewhere nearby. The ground trembled beneath them, and a look of terror spread across the faces around him. "We have to find out," Mark exclaimed, heart racing, the urge to protect igniting anew. "Mark!" John cautioned, but it was too late. Driven by instinct and desperate to uncover the truth, Mark stepped away from the group, ready to face whatever lay beyond the darkness. What revelations awaited him in that stormy chaos? As he moved toward the door, one question echoed in his mind. Would his bravery lead to salvation or doom? Mark cracked the door, the storm's fury thrusting cold air into the sanctuary. His heart pounded as he stepped outside, every instinct screamed at him to turn back. The wind swirled with a violent energy, carrying not just rain, but debris, shattering broken branches against the ground like gunshots. He squinted against the dark, straining to discern shapes in the chaos. Flashing lightning illuminated brief snapshots of the world outside. A fallen tree, a car tipped on its side, the street light flickering like a heartbeat on its last breath. It was a battlefield. "Mark!" Brianna's voice sliced through the roaring wind, her face pale with fear. "Get back here." He swallowed hard, knowing he couldn't turn away now. "We have to see if anyone needs help." His voice barely carried over the tumult, but the urgency surged through him. The storm was more than a threat, it was a call to action. With every step, the world shifted around him. His feet sank into mud, slick and treacherous. The rain lashed at his skin like needles, but he trudged forward, resolving to not let fear dictate his actions. "Mark." This time it was John, his father's tone laced with unyielding authority. "You can't do this alone." But Mark had to believe. He thought of the little girl, alone in the dark without the comfort of knowing her surroundings. He wanted to be her shield, her guiding light. As he moved deeper into the storm, the air crackled with a strange electricity. He spotted shadows moving ahead, a figure struggling against the wind. Adrenaline surged. Mark pushed against the gale, fighting the instinct to retreat. Each heavy step brought him closer. "Help!" the figure shouted, voice raw and desperate. It was a woman, tangled in fallen branches. Panic struck Mark, but he steadied himself with purpose. "Hold on. I'm coming." He struggled through the storm, grasping branches and debris. With relentless determination, he reached her, wide eyes reflecting his own shock. "Thank you. I thought I was trapped forever," she gasped, her voice shaky as he freed her limbs. "Just stay close. We need to get back." He started to lead her when another crack of thunder lit the sky. A sense of foreboding washed over him as the ground shook beneath them. Mark glanced back toward the sanctuary. Was Brianna watching? Was John searching for him? The gnawing worry twisted his stomach, but the woman needed help first. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light descended from the heavens, matching the furious rumble of the storm. Mark turned just in time to see a tree. No, it was flying, its roots lifting from the ground, swirling through the air as if summoned by a dark power. He barely had time to react. "Get down!" He threw himself and the woman to the ground, instinctively covering her with his body as the treetops crashed down nearby. The aftermath left silence in its wake, a deafening stillness after the storm of noise. Mark felt his heartbeat in his ears, adrenaline racing through every vein. As the chaos subsided, he lifted his head, scanning the area, panic washing over him again. "Are you okay?" he asked, breathless, trying to assess the woman's state. But his focus quickly shifted as he heard a muffled scream from the direction of the sanctuary. No, Mark's heart sank. He shot up, ready to sprint back toward the flickering candlelight. "What's wrong?" the woman asked, struggling to get to her feet. "I have to help them," he said fiercely, launching into a dash. Every ounce of fear, every drop of rain only fueled his resolve. He couldn't lose anyone else. Just as he neared the door, an explosion of noise erupted, drawing the eyes of everyone inside. The very building seemed to ripple like a living organism. And in that instant, Mark knew that whatever lay beyond the doorway would test everything he had come to believe about courage, love, and community. Would they find shelter from the storm? Or was this just the beginning of a far greater danger? The storm had raged for what felt like an eternity. Mark stumbled back into the community center, soaked to the bone, heart pounding with the energy of 1,000 fears and hopes all colliding at once. The sound of crashing thunder roared above, almost drowning out the cries for help that echoed in the sudden darkness. He bolted down the dimly lit hall, adrenaline surging through his veins. "Mark." Brianna's worried face appeared in the flickering light. Relief washed over her, but it was fleeting, as dread crept into her expression. "Where's John?" "He went looking for you. Outside," Mark shouted, his voice a mix of panic and urgency. He was trying to help. He could be trapped. Without waiting for a response, he pressed forward, darting back outside, determined to find his father. Each gust of wind whipped against him like a vicious reminder of the chaos surrounding them. The rain lashed down harder, stinging his cheeks and blurring his vision, but he pushed on, calling out John's name into the wild. "Dad." The word broke from his lips, caught in the storm's fury. The only response was the haunting echoes of thunder rolling overhead. As he rounded the corner of the building, there it lay. A massive oak had collapsed, just inches from the entrance. It strained under the weight of debris, blocking the path leading out into the remnants of the chaos. Mark's heart raced, pounding in his chest like a war drum. "No, no," he muttered, eyes scanning desperately for any sign of his father. And then, a faint cry caught his attention, barely audible over the roar of the rain. It came from behind the fallen tree. Mark's instincts kicked into overdrive. He pushed against the soaked ground, muscles straining, rooting himself against the urge to give in to despair. "Hang on, I'm coming," he yelled, plunging into the tangled mess. He moved clumsily, grasping the slick branches and prying them away, throwing aside the debris with primal force. "Dad," he shouted again, praying for a response, his voice breaking from the effort. Panic pierced through him. He wouldn't let this be how it ended. Suddenly, through the gloom, a familiar voice called back, laced with just enough strength to breathe life into Mark's racing heart. "Mark." "Here. I'm here." Mark felt a rush of hope swell within him. He surged forward, pulling away the final pieces that separated him from the man he had struggled to reconcile with. Then, there he was, John, bloodied and shaken but alive. He gripped Mark's shoulder with an urgency that carried a depth of unspoken words. "Are you okay?" Mark asked, breathless and relieved, as he helped to pull his father free. John nodded, though his face spoke of exhaustion and pain. We need to get back inside. The structure is unstable and people are worried. As they emerged from the tangled remains of the tree, back into the pouring rain, Mark felt a sense of urgency. He no longer just wanted to be a son or a friend. He wanted to be part of this community. He wanted to fight for Rivertown the same way he fought to break down the emotional walls that had held him captive for so long. Together, they rushed back to the entrance of the community center, where worried faces had gathered, seeking solace and light amid the turmoil outside. Everyone. Mark called to the crowd, his voice fierce. We need to band together. We'll protect each other. We will weather this storm as a family. We've been doing it all along. He could feel the power of connection pulsing through him, igniting a spark in the others. Brianna smiled bright and brave. We're here, Mark. She clapped her hands together, rallying the children and teenagers who had been anxiously waiting. Gather everyone as strength. Mark shouted, feeling the hum of energy from the crowd. We will not let this storm defeat us. Let us clear the streets, reach our neighbors, and lend a hand wherever needed. With that, he stepped back outside, resolute, pulling his father along with him into the storm. Heart pounding, he gave a swift glance around to see his community like a family born anew, unified in the face of chaos. As they moved through the rain, together they reached others who struggled to find safety. Mark led with a courage he didn't know he possessed, helping people through puddles and debris, watching as families pulled together. The warmth of connection sparked in every glance exchanged, every hand held. The completion of each rescue mingled with laughter and relief, and soon the urgency softened into a rhythm. The storm raged on, but laughter interspersed the tension like sunlight pushing through storm clouds, illuminating their faces with hope. When they finally returned to the sanctuary, Mark felt changed. Each encounter with a neighbor served as a reminder that no one was alone in this fight. His heart swelled, not just for himself but for the entire community he had fought, bled, and worked alongside. At that moment, Mark understood he had rewritten his past not just with his father, but with the entire community. Real healing came from connection, compromise, and shared experiences that built a foundation stronger than any storm could dismantle. As the rain poured outside, and the storm slowly began to fade, a new dawn beckoned. Together, Mark shouted above the chorus of voices, now echoing with all the wounds healed and walls broken down. Together, we rise. The community surged forward, rendered unstoppable by courage, love, and an unwavering hope that guided each step away from the darkness and into the light. It was no longer just Rivertown. It was home, a tapestry woven by compassion, unity, and the kind of love only shared struggles can ignite. And in that moment, Mark finally discovered his balance, embraced deeply in everything he had become through the storm. The end of one chapter marked the beginning of another, where everyone understood that to thrive was to stand together, to weather the storms, and to nurture the million beautiful connections that grow amidst the ruins. If you loved this story, now is the time to act. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire you to your core. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the hope that this story brings. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. Your voice matters. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.